Going. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of The Sense of Things. We have a lot to talk about today. Since Ron and I went to bed on Thursday and put that last thing to bed, we are now in a major conflict in the world. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what the stock market typically does after major events like this. Ron is going to cover who holds top foreign debt or what foreign countries hold our debt. A couple of other things along those correction lines, a couple of economic things. I will cover economics that happened this week that if we didn't have a major conflict, actually we would be having probably an amazing week in the stock market. And I also wanted to talk about oil exports because that, of course, is a major thing that people are concerned about, and talk about who the largest oil producers are in the world. So stay tuned. We will be right back on in just a second. Everybody, welcome to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
Good. The saying still stands. I'm pretty sure I say it almost every week, if not every other week. Never a dull moment.
Nope.
And here we are again, and we have Teflon markets.
Yeah.
We should be down 5 to 8, if not more percent. Probably oil should be above 80, 85. It's not. A
Yep.
lot of that has to do with how much oil we're producing in our country, which I know you'll go over in a little bit. But yeah, I'm not going to say I'm shocked or surprised, but yeah, I really thought we would have been down a lot more.
Yeah. We had a couple big down days, and it was interesting to watch the morning, overnight, and the
Yeah,
morning be
down big.
down significantly. And then by the end of the day, the bulls were rushing in to pick up the slaughter that was happening in the morning almost every day. And we finished either just slightly down or even up by the end of the day most of the week. There's a lot of resilience.
Yeah, we had cash on the sideline with a lot of clients, and
Yep.
we were buying stuff literally in the first couple of hours, thinking, all right, these are good prices, thinking, all right, they may go down a little more. I think they're in the green on everything. Again, I want to buy stuff more at a discount. So it's a little, I don't want to say disappointing, but it was a little frustrating.
Yeah, and it's just everything moves so fast now that unless you take action immediately, you could miss it by the end of the day. And
Yeah.
I just don't see it slowing down. And when we look at some of the economic data I'll share, like I said, had we not had a major conflict that we're in the middle of, the markets would have been rolling all
Well,
week
you know what? You
because
would you would say to yourself, "Hey, we need a catalyst for this market to go down." War would be one of them, but
think,
obviously
yeah,
it would have to be negative against us, which I would
yeah,
never wish for ever. But it's just amazing. All right, let's
yeah.
go here. This week in history, some interesting things. I had to pull some things out, or else we would have had a whole episode on this week in history. All right, here we go. First thing. The Articles of
Yeah.
Confederation ratified after nearly 4 years. So think about it. You had a revolution in 1776, and here we are, the Articles of Confederation.
Yep.
Then 8 years later, government under the U.S. Constitution begins. Even back then, things did not happen quickly.
Yeah, when you think about it too, the war was effectively over right around 1781, but we were literally rudderless as a government for close to 10 years.
Yeah. And you think we have infighting now? The
Oh my
stories
God,
back
yeah.
then, forget it.
Yeah, then
They
they
were ready to
literally were willing to
duel it
kill each
out.
other.
Here you go.
There we are.
1836, Texas declares its independence. And I thought this was interesting. Then you fast forward 25 years later, Texas secedes from the Union along with those following states. I'm not going to read them all. I did not
Well,
know this. And actually, I was trying to get more information on when the hell the Union came back together, and it had to be right after the Civil War. But
yeah.
I didn't realize that because you guys are getting closer to succeeding now, maybe or maybe not so much with this administration, but I did not know that all these states succeeded. I guess that had to happen in the wake of Civil War.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is when we signed on to be a state, The interesting thing is we never signed away our right to be a republic. We're the only state that's did never we never said, okay, we aren't a separate republic at that point and never signed away that. So that's why you always hear about us seceding, because we're the only state that literally said, okay, yeah, we're signing on, but we're not giving up our right to say we're a separate republic. It would be stupid. It is
That's
what
why
it
you guys
is.
have your own power grid too. Just when you succeed, you
Own
don't need
power
to
grid,
rely on the rest of the U.S.
own power grid. We have our own navy. We have our own internal army that's not federalized. So
Don't mess with Texas.
don't mess with Texas.
1872, Yellowstone
There we go.
becomes America's first national park. I knew it was early on. I didn't realize they were the first.
Yeah.
Now, this is very surprising. In 1875,
Huh.
the first indoor game of ice hockey ends in a brawl.
Awesome.
Yeah,
The greatest
very
sport ever.
surprising. And for the next 100 years, up until my Broad Street Bullies in Philadelphia, it continued on.
Yes, it did.
1876, Alexander Graham Bell. Oh, patents,
Nice.
my boo on the spelling. Patents the telephone. So I
Okay.
thought it was a little bit later. I thought it was closer to 1890, a little bit in there. But now think
Yeah.
about it, 1876, there wasn't essentially a phone in every home or every house for another 50 years. So it
Yeah.
took a
I mean,
while to get that
you literally went,
technology,
yeah, you
the
literally had to go to like the
infrastructure.
local telegraph office to get on the phone in a lot of those cases, or like the local general store would have it, but
Yeah, they didn't want to change from the horse carriage to the car
nope.
anytime soon. 1966, John Lennon sparks his first major controversy. The Beatles are bigger than Jesus. And there's video. I've seen so many documentaries. All these stupid kids and religious right zealots are out there burning Beatle records and memorabilia. How much would that be worth today?
Yeah. Idiots.
I know. Just and he came out and look, back then he was very young, right? He was
Mm.
25, 26 years old. And we just said, yeah, look how big we are. Yeah, he wasn't bigger than Jesus, but the idea is that he just said something that, you know what, they were just waiting for him to say
See,
something.
the problem is they misinterpreted what he said. He actually said the Beatles are bigger than Jesus.
Oh,
And that's the problem. He
I'm
was
not sure
not
he knew
wrong at
Spanish
that
back
point.
then.
It's just they misunderstood his Liverpool slang and they took it as Jesus. He said it was Jesus.
All right. 1951. I'm a little out of order here. The
Wow.
espionage trial of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg begins. I saw a documentary a few years ago done by the grandchildren or the grandchild. She did one, and they went back. It was very interesting because a lot of people said that he was wrongly accused. So basically, they went back and actually it was him and a bunch of other, it was a small group of people that were doing the espionage. The wife Ethel had nothing to do with it, so they said that essentially she was murdered.
Yeah.
I don't know how they connected the dots with her. The whole thing, I remember the documentary taking the two kids off. They lived with another family under another name. And then obviously the granddaughter came out and did this thing. It was actually, I think it was on HBO, if I'm not mistaken. Very good because then they went into a lot of the details of this. And yeah,
Hmm.
he was guilty. She was murdered, essentially.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
1971, I was not aware of this.
Huh.
War protesters set off a bomb in the U.S. Capitol building. They said causing about $300,000 worth of damage.
Jesus. Wow.
I did not know that. I know that there was other BS going on outside. How they got into the Capitol
Yeah.
building
With a
is another
bomb.
whole
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
1917, Puerto Ricans become U.S. citizens, are recruited for war effort.
Okay, you're
1918,
on board. Guess what? You're being drafted now.
yep. And then obviously a lot of people said this came over from
Yep.
Spain. The first case is reported in the deadly 1918 flu pandemic. 1962,
Man,
Will
and we
Chamberlain
think,
scores
yeah,
100 points.
we think the COVID pandemic was bad. When you look at the amount of people that
Oh,
died during the flu
and the
pandemic.
misinformation?
Yep.
Absolutely. So Will Chamberlain scores 100
Wow.
points. This now, as great as he was, it would never happen today.
Yeah.
Back then, they didn't have the 3-second rule in the paint. There was a lot of rules that they changed because of Wilt. Maybe he would have had 80. I don't know if he would have had 100. And at the end of the day, don't you think the coach on the other team would have said, "Hey, who's got Wilt? Maybe we should double or triple team him." I don't know.
I was watching something the other day. It was something on YouTube or something like that, and they were talking about Dr. J, who's always been my favorite basketball player of all time. And they're interviewing somebody, and I can't remember who it was that was talking about playing against Dr. J. And he's like, I tried to defend him, and somehow he flew over me and then turned in the air and then went upward and then turned again. And all
I
this.
understand there's a very good documentary on the ABA that
Yeah.
features Dr. J. I don't know if it's on Netflix or Prime. I want to check it out though.
People think Michael Jordan was the greatest, man. Yes, he was
Dr. J was the
fantastic.
pioneer. I was
Yeah.
lucky enough to be in Philly for his heyday years in Philly. And actually, you know what? He made more money investing in the Coca-Cola distributorship in the Philadelphia area
Yeah.
and surrounding areas than he ever did in basketball. A
Oh,
lot
of
of people
course.
don't know that.
Yeah, he was one of that generation of guys that was like, you know what? I know I'm not gonna be able to play forever. I'm gonna invest wisely, not blow all my money on stupid crap, and was phenomenally rich afterwards. So,
Yeah. 1978. I did not know this.
huh.
Reports surface of grave robbers stealing Charlie Chaplin's body. I didn't see anything when they returned it. Why? I do not know.
I get Lincoln's, but Charlie Chaplin, I don't get it.
No. All right, here we go. So here's our first chart. I guess you could bring this up every couple of years when something happens. After a very specific catalyst global major event, what happens in the market 1 month, 6 month, and 1 year after. And if you could see here, the average is up 4.7, the median is up 8% 1 year
Hmm.
later. So many times when these things happen, good to put new money to work.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, except for it, usually wars tend to work out well. Major market crashes, like you look at 1987 crash, major market crashes, it takes a little while to clear that stuff out. And usually there's some kind of reason why you have issues. But I think after major market crashes, one, everybody goes, okay, we're okay. Maybe things weren't so bad in the economy at the time. When a major market crash happens, it's usually because economic issues are there,
Yeah.
which we're really not. And as we go through some of the stuff I'm going to cover, we're just not there right now. So yes, we're having some issues this week, as we've talked about at the beginning of the show. The market's kind of shruffing some of that stuff off later in the day.
Well, if you take a look at two of the events in 2008,
Yeah,
basically the Bear Stearns collapse, we were down 41% a
yep,
year later. We hit a bottom March 9th of '09. Okay.
yeah,
But if you take a look at the Lehman collapse, you actually made money a year
mm,
later
yeah,
because when that happened and everything hit the fan in that September all the way through December, when we were going down literally 1 to 3% a day,
sure.
if you would have put money in on September 16th, right after
Mm-hmm.
the event, you would have made money a year later.
Even better, if you'd listened to Mark Haynes' bottom, you would
Yep,
have
March
been
9th.
even better
Okay.
off.
So who holds our debt? I think this is interesting.
Yeah,
It has a lot of people are well aware China and Japan have been the long-standing holders many years. They have reduced their exposure to our debt over time, but they have always been the two largest holders. I will tell you, our partners or whatever, the Cayman Islands, 427 billion. Cayman, I know it's a
I should.
tax haven,
Even
but
that
isn't
shift
that their
over to the right.
GDP? Our debt, is that their GDP? Give me a break. I don't know how many citizens are in the Cayman Islands, but they have 427 billion of our debt.
But look at Luxembourg too. Luxembourg, you could drive across in about 15 minutes.
I,
It's
I don't, yeah, I don't
426.
get it. Belgium, these
Yeah,
things, we're going to trade Belgium for Greenland anyway, so it doesn't matter.
yeah. There we go.
I thought, I don't know, anything else stand out to you? I just thought
No,
those were
it's
interesting.
interesting. You'd think of some of the largest economies, you'd think they'd hold a lot more of ours, but yeah, some of these small countries hold a ton of our debt, which I guess in their case, it stabilizes their country because they've got a stable, they've got stable investments there. But Luxembourg versus France, which is interesting. But
Right. And
yeah,
also, in the end, this is risk free if they're buying treasuries. They know
Yeah.
they're going to get paid. Even if
Yep.
with government shutdowns, they're still going to get paid. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I some of these numbers really shocked me. If
Yeah.
you
Even like Hong Kong versus China, they're virtually half of what China holds, which is interesting.
yeah, so like the next big, the second or the fourth largest is Canada.
Yeah.
They're smart.
And I would have thought like South Korea, they don't really sell sovereign debt that I'm aware of. I'm sure they do, but it's amazing how small they are in relation to some of these other
Probably just part of the
countries.
diversification portfolio.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So, last slide here. This is always good to show every now and then.
Mhm.
Average retirement savings by age.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell a quick little story and then I'll turn it over to you. We got a lot of new prospective clients coming our way every single month, and we get a lot of 50 somethings that say, okay, the kids are out of the house. We paid for college. Maybe they paid for a wedding. Maybe they kicked them out of the basement, whatever. Now we're ready to save for retirement in the mid 50s. And I'm like, all right, when do you want to retire? I'd like to retire at 65. And all of a sudden, they're like, I don't want to change my standard of living. I want to live off the same amount of income. How much do you have? So, rather ironically, 185 in that range is interesting because I would say the average that a lot of people have in their 50 and mid 50s that say this to me is around 150 or just under. And there's
Okay.
no way they could retire in 10 years
Yeah.
at that making the same amount they are right now. These numbers really haven't changed over the last 20 years too
Mhm.
much other than the market going up. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And if I can find it, I was listening to the news the other afternoon, and they were talking about savings rates around the world
Oh,
and
yeah.
some of the
We're the
highest
lowest.
savings rates. Yeah, it's off the chart. I think the highest in the world is Ireland at 61% savings rate. It's insane.
Huge.
And ours is around what, 10 maybe?
Oh, it's under no, no, no. It's under
Yeah.
five. I
Yeah.
think during crisis situations it goes up to 7 or 8, but we've always hovered plus or minus five for decades.
Yeah. Yeah, the difference is if you want to live a different life, you got to live a different way. You can't sit here and go, "Oh, I've got my kids have moved out, everything's done, and I still need an 8,000 square foot house." Okay, let's be real about this. If you want to retire at 65, you're gonna have to make some massive changes. And I look at it in my life, at the more money
Both
I
the
made,
spending and saving.
yeah, it's like you got to stop the spending part, which of course our economy is built on spending. So that affects the economy. But the reality is you've got to be real about this. And there's no way you're going to get there if you're still going to continue to save 4 or 5% at the most over time. And I think that's one of the challenges we created in our country saying, okay, we're shifting from that pension based economy to a, hey, you're
Directed.
on your own. People, yeah, they're on their own and they just haven't really come to the reality of this. So,
I hear you. Okay, what do you got?
all right, let's rock through this pretty fast here. So, some of the stuff this week, like I said, once again, when you look at what the economy has done versus the fact that we've been in a major conflict all week long. A lot of really interesting numbers this week. So, ISM Manufacturing Index, so Institute of Supply Managers Manufacturing Index, over 50 is good. This is the second month in a row we've been over 50, and this is back all the way to 2022 that we've not been over 50. So we're running positive 52.4, which beat the consensus once again. If you look at the services index, it's even better, 56.1 versus 53. Couple of other things. The manufacturing PMI, Managers Manufacturing Index, up 52. Once again, same thing, over
Anything over
50 is
50
good,
with ISM and PMI is good.
is awesome. That just means that things are starting to kick in the right direction. ADP employment report, and we've talked about this before. It doesn't necessarily mean that much as a grand scheme of things, but it is a really good indicator of small businesses. And we're looking at it came in up 63,000. Now, what I had heard in the media was the expectation was 50. The consensus actually was 43. So it beat by almost 20,000. That is huge. That's a big number up. Now, one of the things that they didn't talk about is it did get reduced down in January from where it was. I don't know. Some of that may be a little bit hinky there when it comes to it, but it's a good number, and it's a really good number in the end. Jobless claims, they're holding steady around that 213, 215 range. This one was interesting. We're starting to finally get some of these numbers, which I think are important. Non-farm productivity up 2.8%. So the consensus was 1.9. Unit labor costs are up 2.8%, which you might say this is a bad thing because that's cost to employers. But when you have productivity up, if productivity's up, it doesn't necessarily mean that labor costs are reflective on inflation inside of companies and everything else. Last one, and I thought this one was extremely important. And once again, we're just now getting some of the stuff from the government shutdown. This is for January, and we're getting these things in March. Import export prices. So import prices month over month, 0.2. That was a little bit better, or actually quite a bit better. Export prices up 0.6, which was way above. But when you start looking at import versus export, import prices, so if you believe if we have tariffs, everything is horrible, we're actually down 0.1% year over year on import prices. We're up 2.6 on year over year export prices. So what does that mean? That means that we're not paying as much on things coming in. So we're not necessarily seeing inflation on things coming in, but the stuff we're selling overseas, we're making a heck of a lot of money on. So once again, those are things that if you took out, all right, we're having a major war that we're in the middle of in the Middle East right now. All these things are really conducive to, hey, the economy is firing on all cylinders right now. What's your thoughts?
These numbers sound good,
Yeah.
but there's been a lot of layoffs. JP Morgan just announced a lot of layoffs. Block, Meta announced a lot of layoffs. Some of them say because of AI. You know how I feel about that. In the end, I think AI may create jobs. I don't think it's just like with technology back in the day with word processors. Did they replace typewriters? Yeah, they didn't
Mm.
necessarily replace people. They just made people
Yeah.
more efficient. So
Sure.
with the import export stuff, this looks good. I have a feeling that a lot of these numbers will change and be modified over time as we see tariffs kind of keep swinging left and right. It's really tough. Obviously, the PMI and the ISM numbers are really good because anything above 50 means expansion in both of them.
Mm.
We'll have to see, but it's the employment number to me that I'm keeping a bigger eye on than some of these.
Yeah. Like I said, an employment number. And one of the things we'll cover next week, we just didn't have the time to this time, was your piece on delinquency rates and things like that, kind of giving everybody an
Spiking,
update on that. So make
spiking.
sure, yeah, make sure that you watch next week's show because we're going to cover that. And that's the canary in the coal mine that as delinquency rates go up, if we see any kind of a slowdown in employment, man,
That'll slow
people.
down spending and consumer discretionary.
Yep, and we did see a little bit of that in the fall anyhow. I think it's very interesting there. The last thing I wanted to cover, and I think this is extremely important as we look at, why didn't oil spike over 100 during this time period? 2024 production, and this is 2024. This is not even 2025 after President Trump came in and it was the drill baby drill era here. In 2024, the world's largest oil producers, hello, here's the United States at 22% of the world's total. I would venture to say that's probably closer to a maybe 30 at this point. I don't know, but we've been producing like crazy. Saudi Arabia is half what we do. Russia is half what we do.
Well, the
Canada's,
production is slowed down for a reason.
yeah. Iraq and Iran. So Iran, if you take them out of the mix at this point, they're only 5% of the world right now. And I think the interesting thing has been, yeah, during this time period, this few days, the 6 days, okay, oil's slowed down out of the Gulf, but we could easily ramp up. And one of the ones that comes in right below where Brazil is Venezuela. And we effectively have control of that right now because we're able to refine it faster than some of their refineries in Venezuela. That ramps up that production a little bit more as well. Okay, could could we make up for the fact that Iran is effectively not going to be able to produce? Yeah, I think we easily can at this point. So that explains to me why we're really not seeing major spikes. I think really any spike that we've
Well, we're
seen
more
in oil.
self-sufficient. That's a huge
Yeah,
part of it. But I would like to see a chart. Maybe we could do it for next week. What does this chart look like, either in spaghetti lines, left to right, or what? Where were these countries? How did we compare to these countries 10, 20, and 30 years ago compared to
yeah.
today? This is where we are today. But
Well,
over time, where were we 10, 20, and 30 years ago?
yeah, which was horrible in the early 90s. I know. I found a chart when I was looking for this one that showed where we were in 71, and we're basically back to where we were in 71. We were about
Well, that was
70% of the world.
before George Bush Sr. helped the Saudi Arabia find oil in the desert.
Yeah.
Once they found
Yeah,
the
and
oil in
then
the desert, it was
yeah,
game
and then
over in
they
50
held our
years.
feet to the fire. Yeah. With OPEC, they held our feet to the fire in the late 70s. Thanks, guys. We helped them. I just don't think they have the ability to they've got withering reserves at this point, and I think Russia's way up there, but I think we've been able to replace Russia in a lot of cases with our friends and neighbors that were saying, hey, we can produce it. And you're not basically funding the Russian war against Ukraine at that point. So
Yeah.
it's intriguing. All right, folks, thank you for joining us for another week. We appreciate your time. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and make sure that you catch us back here because there was a bunch of stuff we couldn't do this week that we're going to do next week. So make sure that you are on and watching because I think we'll have more and who knows where we'll be war-wise by that point. All right. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys back here the next time.